Serious Americans, would you be in support of putting a law in place that government officials, such as senators and the president, go without pay during shutdowns like this, while other federal employees do? Why, or why not? Attention! Serious tag notice jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation, and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit, message composed to =r_credit, if you have any questions or concerns. At face value I would think it's a good idea, but I saw someone pointed out a rather logical reason why it wouldn't. Basically, the wealthier representatives could wait out the poorer ones. A better solution would be to cancel recess for everybody involved. Edit. Just to clarify, recess removing recess means that the Senate cannot adjourn. I would prefer that Congress can't leave the Capitol until a budget is passed. I think that could turn into a game of big bank little bank. The wealthiest politicians could just wait out those with less money in order to get their way. The whole reason they don't already is because then the richer congressmen would use it against the poorer ones. Terrible idea. I'd rather change the law so that not passing the budget defaulted to a continuing resolution. There is no reason a shutdown should happen. No, but I'm also against allowing critical federal employees to go without pay. I think if they're required to work, we should be required to pay them. Regarding the why not of politicians, we're finally starting to get some who aren't coming from wealth. I'd hate for those people to get pushed out because they can't afford to be politicians. I want to see more representation of working and middle-class people in our government. Obligatory update. Thanks for the silver, kind internet stranger. Deleted. Functionally, you would need an amendment rather than just a law. Congressional members aren't paid from annual appropriations and are paid through a salary not based on hours worked, but as their status as members. More importantly, members of Congress are constitutional officers. The president and life-tenured federal judges is also a constitutional officer and also cannot be prevented from carrying out their duties except as allowed in the Constitution. As such, they're all constitutionally entitled to pay. Article 1, Section 6 of the Constitution, the senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services, to be ascertained by law, and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. 27th Amendment, no law, varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives, shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. It also functionally wouldn't do much besides perhaps damage the one or two financially untenable younger members, AOC for example. The shutdown and pay being withheld impact only those employees that need that money imminently, which is not the vast majority of Congress and certainly not the president. So that amendment would functionally not be much more than a feel-good effort. I personally like the Canadian system. If their legislature ever fails to pass a budget, they've failed at their primary responsibility of running the government. Failing to pass a budget is treated as a failure of confidence, and a general election is triggered whereby every parliamentarian must face their voters and re-justify why they should have a job. And number X200B. Not saying that would force all US legislators to act, but it would probably incentivize enough to avoid stupid bleep like this latest shutdown. This is a terrible idea. For one thing, most of them would not care. My senators are worth millions of dollars, they don't even notice their salary. For another thing, some congresspeople do really depend on their salary. This is their only source of income. See the problem here? If we cut off their pay, then the rich congressmen have a weapon to use against the poor congressmen. There would be more government shutdowns and threats of shutdowns, and vote with me or lose your paycheck would become a viable, common tactic for the wealthier members of Congress. A better idea would be to just stop voting for idiots. Or, more applicable to this audience, +12 +12 +12 +12 +12 +12 +12 vote. Edit. Thank you for the gold and silver and the great discussions. This shutdown is extremely frustrating for everyone, and there are no easy answers. But the more we talk about potential solutions, the more likely we are to find some that work. This simple argument against it is that newer or less corrupt congressmen would be the only ones to suffer. If you're making $500K selling your soul to a big corporation, then your check for being a part of Congress is an afterthought. Meanwhile, freshman senators who realistically spent nearly all of their money on campaigning to get into Congress and change a broken system will be the only ones to suffer. So this could just help the spread of corruption against high-ranking government members. Although why should they be exempt from suffering the way SAW workers or prison workers do? I feel that instead of stopping anyone from getting paid, if a budget isn't agreed upon, then we have an emergency 3 months airbag where we pay federal workers for those 3 months and essentially use the previous budget. If those 3 months go by and still no movement is made, then there should be repercussions for Congress and the presidency. Something along the lines of an immediate replacement of all leading members of Congress and a removal of the current president. This later one is dangerous because there are times that Congress would be willing to kill itself to kick a sitting president out of power, such as Republicans during the Obama administration and I suspect Democrats during the Trump administration. Additionally, Congress should be forced into a minimum of 8-hour workdays with the president sitting in on the meeting trying to find a compromise. There should be no vacations, time off, or excuses with the exception of terminal illness. If a member of Congress fails to show up, they would effectively be removed from Congress, and if the sitting president or vice president is not there, then their power to veto a budget will be removed, and it would only take both houses to confirm a budget. I don't think the whole shutdown concept should even exist. Budgets for projects with limited lifetimes should end, but operating budgets for ongoing departments and agencies should run along as is until changed. There should never be a no budget conflict. It should be about how much we spend or don't spend on each individual thing. I support a law that ends shutdowns by continuing funding at previous levels if no new budget is passed. I would not support it. If that were in place, richer government officials could literally use this as a pressure technique all the time to force poorer government officials to bend to their will in order to end a shutdown. I don't think money should have as much influence on our politicians as it currently does. But taking away a government official's base salary isn't the way to do it. I like the idea, but I don't think it would do a whole lot. First, there would be some constitutional issues with regards to the 27th Amendment. I think you could phrase it so that you can comply with the 27th Amendment, but there would certainly be court challenges that you would have to spend time and energy fighting. Beyond that, though, senators, representatives, and presidents aren't really dependent on their salaries. The majority of them are either independently wealthy or make a ton of money off capital gains, investments. I don't think holding their salary would change their standard of living in the slightest. I'd be more in favor of holding an impromptu election like other countries do. If a Congress can't work together to keep the government open at a minimum, why not revote, and whoever the public decides is the problem gets thrown out? Here's the thing, I only think it would work if you eliminated income from all sources, i.e. investments and outside revenue streams. Basically, you'd have to put a freeze on the bank accounts of the politicians during a shutdown, and you'd never have one again. At least half of our members of Congress have such wherewithal that their congressional salary is meaningless to them. The cost of voting to shut down the government should be the calling of new elections. How about instead of a shutdown, no one leaves the room until bleep gets resolved? And honestly, calling it a shutdown is such bullshit. All the employees who aren't getting paid right now still must come into work. They still take taxes out of my paychecks. The military is still doing its military thing. The border patrols are still patrolling. The USPS is still shipping packages in mail. If the government was really shut down, none of that stuff should be going on. No. Corrupt politicians would have advantage over honest ones. Honest ones might find it easier to get money illegitimately than to solve the shutdown problem, which corrupt politicians would love. I'm generally in favor of the idea that Congress should be bound by every law it passes. They get to use the things they pass for the rest of us, healthcare, the retirement, hiring practices, etc. No exceptions for the special people.